pronouns. I'm from OTR Bristol. So OTR Bristol has worked within VIP for the past year and a half. So we joined much later to the project, but in particular, looking at the delivery around gender and sexuality work specifically. So just thinking about the kind of the breadth and work that has happened around gender, sexuality and identity within VIP has been really significant. Would you like me to share my thoughts and reflections at this point?
Yeah, actually, we'll do it that way. That would be great.
No problem. So in terms of kind of joining the partnership, which was obviously already pre-formed at that point, the work that OTR does, we're a young people's mental health and wellbeing social movement, working with those 11 to 25 across Bristol and South Gloucestershire. But the project which I'm based within is Freedom Youth, which is Bristol's oldest, longest running gender and sexuality project. So kind of it would not necessarily be the work in which OTR would necessarily do when thinking about the cross-section of work with those 18 and up, but it felt like it was a really important project and has been a really important project when thinking about supporting LGBTQ plus people and communities. So therefore we felt that there was a real synergy in terms of the work taking place, and we really wanted to be a part of supporting. So we've been very welcomed into the partnership, which has been a real opportunity, I think, to meet and connect with organisations delivering a whole wealth of really important voice and influence work across the city. The work around gender, sexuality and identity within Bristol is often quite fragmented. The infrastructure for LGBTQ plus groups and services is very small. There isn't a kind of funded LGBTQ plus specific organisation undertaking work, and therefore actually the kind of micro grant model sitting with the LGBTQ plus part of the fund felt really, really important. So powering up and giving space and place to grassroots activists who are already really running and delivering fantastic work in the city, and by providing small pots of money with an application process that was both accessible but also at the same time about targeting work that felt really important that was happening, and also rewarding that was really important. We've had in place a LGBTQ plus community development worker for 1 day a week since January as a way to kind of be able to offer the support to micro grant organisations. As you saw in the film, the organisation which was able to access one pot of funding was around creating visibility and representation. And certainly there's been a whole range of projects which, you know, to think across sport, to think across wellbeing, in particular around improving accessibility. A shout out to kind of work that has happened within the project specifically has been creating better links across organisations. But in particular, I think what's been really important is to look at and think about the ways in which the community has really demonstrated a lot of resilience. So being able to think about ways in which, despite COVID-19, this has been delivered both virtually and in person, that kind of groups and individuals have been able to undertake a whole range of projects, from kind of work such as creating a queer in quarantine anecdotes story, so thinking about how to profile and platform experiences of LGBTQ plus people through COVID-19, work across mental health and wellbeing through LGBTQ plus sports, running and rugby groups, thinking about the ways in which also to support organisations which are returning back to face-to-face work. So sustaining LGBTQ plus kind of activists and change makers in the city, supporting them. It's been a real pleasure to kind of be involved in this work, but it's also been really very much a piece of work that we've been very proud to be a part of, but also recognise a real kind of need for more work across gender and sexuality in the city. And that's something that actually this has been very much a springboard for. I would say, lastly, one of the real benefits of the work that we have seen happen is a real element of intersectionality. So learning from the range of partners within the group, and also being able to deliver training, consultancy development work across the board. So us each educating one another around the communities in which we work with, but also as well making links and creating opportunities with events, for example, and also events like this, bringing people together and kind of offering up the opportunities to educate people about how to access voice and influence, also talking around council consultations, and more importantly, I suppose, connecting communities. So in terms of kind of the work, very much so, we've been really proud to be a part of, and really want to think about the ways in which this goes on forward from here for LGBTQ plus people and communities and beyond. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Henry. So moving on, maybe we go to Alex next. What were some of your highlights from your work with the IP so far?
Oh, thank you. So just to say, first of all, I'm Alex Rakes. I'm the Strategic Director from SARI, Stand Against Racism and Inequality. And we also are the Administrative Lead for Bristol Hate Crime and Discrimination Services. I think most of you know, but we basically deliver the hate crime services across the city. And we are an advisory partner because although SARI's got quite a strong race focus, we cover all strands of inequality and equality, and cover all types of hate crime. So yeah, you know, Henry, you've got a lot of the points I wrote down, so which is good because I think it just shows. I think you know some of the common sort of learning and positives of VIP. I mean, personally, I really believe in the idea of having this collaborative coming together of the voice and influence groups in the city, because there's such a strength in numbers. So obviously we had to choose particular partners, which isn't ideal, you know, so that's more the learning. I think is that if we could, you know, it'd be open to the various different voice and influence partners within the different groups and strands. As we know, when you take disability, when you take LGBTQ+, and you take race, there's so many different groups who are delivering voice and influence in one way or another. But the main thing was we gained so much from working together. Because intersectionality is critical. So, you know, when you take any one of the strands that people might be focused on, then there's intersectionality within it. And to have the cross-fertilization from each of us was so rich, and it led to lots of new partnerships and new projects. I think I can quote just a couple. One is we're now working with Wessel on this really significant training project called Inclusive Policing with Confidence. So we're going to be jointly training 3,000 plus officers, or we've already started it, along with Babasa Diversity Trust, and an evaluation expert, which wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if we hadn't sort of come together and got to know each other more through this work. And then we've done loads of joint work with a number of the partners, including Wessel and Bristol Older People's Forum, on things like our public transport safety and equalities group in the city, and with yourselves, Henry, with Off the Record. So we've done lots of joint work where, because we've kind of got that relationship, we bring each other in to help influence things that really matter in our city. So I chair that group, and that's all about how do we make public transport more accessible, how do we achieve equalities, both in terms of all the staff and employees in different transport industries, but also for, you know, passengers and service users. And there's been some amazingly you know, successful collaborative work between us on some of that. Those are just some examples. We also, with Ian, we did the lanyard project, remember? So you know, with COVID, that was so important, you know, people wearing lanyards to define, you know, to around their disability, to make people aware, why they didn't have to wear masks and things like that. Well, that is more complex than if you can imagine. So, you know, Bristol Older People's Forum, sorry, went off to research it more, but that ended up being sort of useful for so many different groups and people. So I think also together we can raise awareness so much more to all our memberships in an intersectional way. And what you found is a lot of our members went to different things we were organising that they might not have done. So it's just that's really rich, isn't it? You know, and so that people can actually know more what's going on. And if they do, if they actually, quite often people are covering several strands, and they can go to things that are happening led by each of the partners, and you're much more passionate about it when you know what each other's doing in terms of driving that forward. We did, even though COVID meant this was really difficult, but we managed to do a few events and festivals when COVID wasn't knocking us down. And I just love the fact that we had some joint stalls, or we're running across to each other in a way we might not have been, and you know, able to say that we were working together on this initiative. Again, really, I think very empowering for communities to see that. We tackled some challenges together, you know, because it's a very political environment. Let's be honest, there's rifts, and we have some really challenging debates that I think were better because we were kind of working on them together with all our different areas of knowledge and expertise and diversity of thought. To me, it's essential, really, and it's a massive loss if we don't somehow carry this on, but I know we'll come to that later when we get to action plans and learning. And I'll stop there on the learning. I have got a few more points on challenges.
And Lucy, if you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your highlights.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy. I work for an organisation called Wessel. We're a disabled people's user-led organisation based in Bristol and surrounding areas. And we've been involved with Voice Influence since quite early on, not quite the beginning, but quite early on. I think from my point of view and from Wessel's point of view, what's been really good about the project is seeing how it's evolved. So seeing how the initial intentions maybe have evolved into something much more bottom up from our communities, as opposed to supporting council consultations and things that maybe we were doing right at the beginning. The way the partnership, like Alex has mentioned, has grown and worked together and learned about each other and about each other's communities, and especially through something as challenging as COVID, being able to have joint initiatives. The micro grants project is the highlight for me of the project, and hopefully everyone gets to see the film in its full glory at some point after this, because it's a really great piece of work. But that was just a great example of not putting in too many restrictions, asking people what matters to you, what do you need, what will support you, and helping to make that happen with as little bureaucracy and red tape as possible. Also, from our point of view as an organisation and the disabled people we work with, we've been able to get involved in other initiatives, for example, being involved in the Public Transport and Equalities Group, so having quite a strong voice in the conversation around disabled people's experiences of using taxis and the e-scooters, which have come into the city. We have been able to link up some of the work we've done with some of our other groups. So some of the work we've done with our young people, who have now become an advisory panel advising on the development of an independent living space at Brislington House, which is a fantastic piece of work. The mayoral hustings, so that was a great piece of work. So organised through the Voice and Influence Partnership, we were able to get directly from our communities straight to the mayoral candidates, which was, a great thing to be able to do, and under tricky circumstances. So it was great how that was all pulled through. And it's also, I think, as an organisation, just put Voice and Influence at the top of our agenda, really, and made it back in the forefront of the aims of our organisation as a disabled people's organisation. So, yeah, I agree with what Alex and Henry have both said, that it's crucial to keep Voice and Influence going, and it's crucial to keep these kind of partnerships going and tackling the challenges that we might experience head on and having open conversations about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine, if we come to you.
Hi there, my name's Christine. I'm from the Amadan Centre, and Amadan is the faith partner in the Voice and Influence Partnership. We also came late to the partnership just about a year ago. And the first meeting that we had, which of course had to be on Zoom, the attendance was really good, and I think it showed that people of faith wanted to be heard, and also there were people who were listening to people of faith. So it's a voice that's really significant. For us, the community fund, like the other partners, has been really important. I think part of it has been that, VIP, whilst Zoom is great and it's a way of connecting us in ways that we might not have done otherwise, the community project, the community projects really made a difference to people in their everyday lives. And I think one of the threads through all of the faith projects is the connection, the importance of connection between people in the community, particularly during COVID times. and making sure that people remain connected to their faith communities. So technology was part of it. But I do encourage you to watch to the end of that film and to see the project from God's House International and listen to Pastor Ossian and Layla, who is a single mum. The God's House International project is really connecting well with people who are in need and need support and need to be connected. And the story that they tell is a really great one of how they have done that as a faith community. Intersectionality has been talked about a lot before, and it really is hugely important. Some of the meetings that we've had, we've connected with people in the mental health sector, and so learned about a new community faith reference group in Bristol. Also learnt about research into ethnicity and mental health. And again, if you look at the community projects, some of those also address mental health as well. We've also looked at, well, I feel we've identified certain areas, for example, connecting with the youth, connecting with climate change as different faith groups. These are things that we still need to continue to explore. I think one of the messages from all of us is that we haven't finished. We've barely scratched the surface. And it's really important for us to stay connected, because we do learn a huge amount from each other, and there's a tremendous amount of support, because at the end of the day, we're all about supporting people in the community and making sure that their voices are heard. So VIP has been brilliant in terms of linking with other partners and learning from each other. It's important it carries on. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And last for this bit, but by no means least, Ian, if you could introduce yourself and talk a bit about your highlights.
Thank you. Ian Quaife, Development Manager at the Bristol Older People's Forum. I'm not going to mention intersectionality just because everyone else does, although I think it's a good idea. The thing for me about this, really, in terms of highlights, there's a number of really important things for us at the Bristol Older People's Forum. Firstly, the legacy of voice and influence is really important, what we build going forward. And that's because I think the idea of voice and influence is a great, you could argue it's motherhood and apple pie, but in another way, for older people in particular, I think voice and influence is really important. Because we're really keen to kind of shift the agenda away from the medical model of age and aging towards the social empowerment model. And I think that's important. And that the Voice and Influence Partnership has given us that kind of thrust as we go forward. So that's really important. And I think the work that we did was based very much on bearing in mind, it was a bit of a numbers game. Judith, who's with us today, will know this, a bit of a numbers game at first. And so we had to go out there and do real work, actually meet people, obviously pre-COVID, and talk to them and make them an offer. If you sign up for Voice and Influence, you will get X, Y, and Z. And that was important as well, because we wanted, again, at the forum, to offer our members across the city some services and make it attractive for them to sign up to not just Voice and Influence Partnership, but to the Bristol Older People's Forum as well. So that was a key. And one of those offers was actually working with local groups in a community development asset-based approach to the work, working with some of the local older people's groups in the area across Bristol and individuals as well. So that was important, I think, in terms of the work. And the other aspect that was really important for us was that we were able, because we've got our open forum meetings, which will happen bi-monthly, and obviously pre-COVID they were real life meetings, and since COVID been on Zoom, was that gave us the opportunity to work as part of the contract with Bristol City Council and offer opportunities for consultation. And I think that was important as well, because we want to be critical friends with the City Council. We want to hold them to account. And again, this gave older people some influence over some of the decision made. And again, going forward, that's important as well. And we are taking that work forward as we with our new work, because we've been funded through the Impact Fund now to take some of this work forward. The fact that we would want to be, in terms of voice and influence, there at the beginning of decisions, the design and the development and the before the delivery, so that older people are kind of making sure that they're involved in that design, rather than kind of being a tick box and saying, what color do you want your nuclear power station we're going to build next door to you? We don't want to do that. We want to be there at the beginning to say we don't want a nuclear power station. Does that make sense? I thought that was quite good. Anyway, yeah, so I think, yeah, just to finish really, I think voice and influence has been important. I think it's a good, it's something to build on for us. In a way, we want to take the kind of the product, if you like, forward. You know, I even like it. Voice and influence is, as I said, it's quite a positive thing. So for the Older People's Forum, it's at the heart of what we do. The other final thing I would say was, and this is important as well, I think, it's enabled us to kind of reinforce and further the agenda around raising awareness about ageism and age discrimination, and raising awareness and challenging some of the kind of, you know, from within the sector, unfortunately, and from without the sector, some of the ageism that takes place. And I think in that way, it's been a really good piece of work, and we look forward to taking it forward as a kind of legacy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. And so I guess from my point, I'm sort of been sitting at the center of all of this, helping coordinate things. I think the thing that's really stood out for me has been reaching a point where we have a partnership that's really kind of grown to a strong position, where it works very naturally and instinctively together, and what that has meant we've been able to achieve. I'm really conscious of time, so I'm not going to say all the things that I wanted to say. One of the things I will mention is that we have something called our VIP citizen members. This was part of what we were originally asked to do when we were set up by the council. I've got just under 1,000 of them now, and something that I think is sort of encapsulates things for me is that we do a survey with them each year. And the last survey we did, the results came back, and 77% of respondents said that being a member of Voice and Influence Partnership had meant they felt more aware of and able to have their say on decisions that affected their local area. And 79% of them said that being a member of VIP had meant they felt more aware of and able to have their say on decisions that affected the public services they use. They were two of the key things that we were tasked with achieving. And so for me, that felt really important. The citizen membership has also been great, because what we've been able to do is reach directly to individuals. And so community organizations and community leaders have been great ways of connecting with communities. But for us, we had this real bonus that we could go directly to this nearly 1,000 people and communicate with them one-on-one almost. We were going to talk a bit more about the challenges, but I'm very conscious of time and I'd like us to move on to the workshop. So I will just say one last thing, which is I'm sure people picked up from the conversation, the partnership, Voice and Influence Partnership, we didn't apply to Bristol Impact Fund 2, but we are going to continue our work together. We're currently developing those plans and we will share them as soon as possible. So I'll just say thank you to everyone on the panel. Sorry for having to cut this section short, but what I'd like to do now is move us all on to the workshop.